Welcome back, friends. I hope we are all doing well. Thanks again for viewing our series on the Army of the Potomac. Now, this is going to be one of our weird video sections. So, being we have an entire series dedicated to not only what happened from June 28th to July 4th, 1863, but we have even done a biography on the commander, George Gordon Meade. So, what I'll be doing is at this completion of this video, I will add the bio to the series, but I will also leave links in the description of the video. So before we continue, thank you all for the support as always. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. I do put new content up every day except on weekends. I'm very happy to interact with y'all. So today we will be discussing the Army of the Potomac from Gettysburg until the Overland Campaign. Usually we do it until the end of the commander's tenured as commander, but Meade will remain commander of the Army of the Potomac until the end of the war. So today we will be discussing the retreat from Gettysburg, Bristoe Campaign, and the Battle of Mine Run, or the Mine Run Campaign. It is July 4th, 1863. Robert E. Lee and his Army of Northern Virginia has just lost 26,000 of their seasoned soldiers and are beginning a long retreat back to Virginia from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Meade and the Army of the Potomac was responsible for cleaning the field, but he was also getting demands from Washington to pursue the crippled Army of Northern Virginia and end the conflict. So the Cavalry Corps was split. General John Buford and his division pursued the main columns of the Confederate 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Corps towards South Mountain, while Kilpatrick and Gregg pursued General Lee's long wagon train of wounded and dying men. Meade would send the 6th Corps, who had not been greatly engaged, to support Buford's attacks, but also importantly to provide cover for his other 6 corps that were slowly making their way towards Virginia. Similar to Hooker, Meade positioned his columns so they would protect Washington and Baltimore. The Cavalry Corps did their job well, attacking the wagon train at Monterey Pass, while commanded by Judson Kilpatrick, and also a young George Armstrong Custer. Buford continued to skirmish with Ewell, Longstreet, and Hill at Fairfield and Hagerstown. But then on July 12th, Lee had anchored himself on the Potomac, which had risen due to recent rainstorms. So he had made a defensive line near Williamsport. Meade then surrounded him on the river. But Meade began being an engineer from roots, recognized how strong the positions were. Lee, frustrated that Meade would not attack, on July 13th ordered a full withdrawal at night across the Potomac. The next day, Meade had planned for a 4-corps assault on the position, but reconnaissance had informed him that the Army of Northern Virginia had withdrawn in the night. There were 2 more battles following the Confederates' withdrawal across the Potomac: Battle of Williamsport and Manassas Gap, both ending in draws. For many in Washington, the victory at Gettysburg was now bitter. Radical Republicans in Congress, such as Thaddeus Stevens, demanded Meade's removal from command, citing his Irish Catholic roots to be part of a grand Irish Catholic conspiracy to get in the way of the war. Lincoln, however, refused, citing if there were any braver soldiers than those Irish Catholics fighting in the Army of the Potomac. Lincoln, however, would criticize Meade, but modern historians have begun to agree Meade made possibly the better decision. For who knows how many could have been killed had Meade's assault happened at Lee's entrenchments near Williamsport. Lee had now placed he and his army south of the Rapidan River. He also had sent Longstreet west to assist the Army of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Meade, discovering this, and immediately acted. He was ready to use almost the same tactic that Hooker had planned to use, but in some irony, Lee discovered that Meade had moved the 11th and 12th Corps to the west as well. So in his eyes, his enemy was depleted. On October 13th, 1863, believing to only be attacking Teamsters, Jeb Stuart led a raid towards Auburn, Virginia. However, unfortunately, it was not Teamsters. It was the rear elements of General William French's 3rd Corps. The cavalry and rear guard would engage on the 13th at Auburn. Though inconclusive, French surrounded the cavalry. Lee sent General Ewell's corps to save Stuart. They were engaged the next day at the Second Battle of Auburn on the 14th. Stuart and Ewell would escape, and French, with assistance of Governor Warren of the Second Corps, would hold their positions and supplies. But Lee, believing he had them on the run, sent A.P. Hill to pursue the Fifth Corps to Bristow Station. Now, Warren was made commander of the Second Corps while Hancock recovered. He and John Caldwell would switch back and forth until Hancock's return. But Warren had set a trap for A.P. Hill, because the Union were not retreating. They were reforming. As Hill's strike towards Sykes in the 5th Corps, Warren and the 2nd Corps quickly came down on Hill's flank. Hill had no choice but to withdraw from action, which actually convinced Ewell to disengage. Meade was content as his men continued the push. 5 days later, near Buckland Mills, Judson Kilpatrick was ambushed and defeated by Jeb Stuart and his cavalry. Skirmishes would continue throughout the positions. On November 7th, 1863, nearing winter quarters, the armies would clash again at the Second Battle of Rappahannock Station. The battle was to control the Confederate pontoon across the river, being the only remaining one Lee had. So Meade split his forces. Sedgwick and the 6th Corps would cross and hold up the Confederates at Rappahannock Station. And then French and the 3rd Corps would 5 miles downriver cross and outflank the Army of Northern Virginia. Lee had actually hoped Meade would do this, because it worked into his own offensive plans. But somehow, whether it was communications or whether it was just something went wrong, everything fell apart. The Confederate forces were now trapped on the Rapidan River. Meade was now able to deliver a killing blow if Lee were to continue with his current plan. But Lee recognized how Meade had put him in the same position that Lee himself had put General Pope in 1 year earlier after the Battle of Second Manassas. So Lee completely disengaged and fled more south. The Bristow Campaign was a glorious victory, making Meade the only Army of the Potomac commander to not only defeat Lee in one battle, but defeat Lee in 2 campaigns. Similar to Burnside, Meade did not want to stop. He had Bobby Lee on the run. He had cornered him. So instead of settling in for the winter, he decided to make one more attempt. Now, this is commonly referred to as the Mine Run Campaign, but it was only a 5-day action between Meade and Lee near the Wilderness. In fact, very close to where Stonewall Jackson had crushed the 12th Corps during the Battle of Chancellorsville. From the 27th of November to the 2nd of December, the two armies engaged in constant skirmishes back and forth across a 4-mile front, starting south near Orange Plank Road and ending north near the Orange Turnpike. On the 29th of November, the 2nd Corps executed a remarkable redeployment south of the Union left flank, allowing Sykes to fall into his previous position. Meade then commanded an artillery bombardment on Lee's freshly created fortifications. From Warren, then would be followed by an assault by General Sedgwick's corps. Though the bombardment would happen, the attack would not. Meade would cite Lee's entrenchments were far too well constructed to assault, and he would not even want to risk the entire 6th Corps. The Army of the Potomac would finally disengage and set up winter quarters near Brandy Station, ending the Mine Run Campaign in a draw. Not what Meade would have wanted, or the Northern government, but he would be entering winter quarters with an undefeated army. The first time the Army of the Potomac would be entering the winter quarters. Lee would also go into winter quarters exhausted, wishing to resign, but constantly being denied by the Confederate Congress and Jefferson Davis. Grant would arrive at Brandy Station in March of 1864, at the end of the winter quarters. Meade would offer his resignation to Grant, so he could command the Army of the Potomac. But Grant would deny it, stating Meade was the most successful and experienced person in the art of fighting Robert E. Lee. Next episode, we will be discussing Grant and his life and post-war life, and then after that, we will go into the Overland Campaign and the end of the war. I'm going to warn you all, the Grant bio will most definitely be as long, if not longer, than the Robert E. Lee one. simply because we will be covering an entire theater of the war. Grant pretty much defined the entire Western theater of the war. But as always, friends, until next time, please like, share, comment, and if this is your first time viewing, I'd love to earn your subscription, and we'll see you in the next one.